Oh, wrong one. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. The South Huron Committee of Adjustment is called to order at 5 p.m. And are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests at this time? Okay. I would ask the Secretary to Treasurer to read the recommendation.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. That South Huron Committee of Adjustment approve the minutes of May 21st, 2024 as printed and circulated.
Make a motion. You'll second it. Ted will second it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Carry. The next item on the agenda, the purpose of this public meeting of South Huron Committee of Adjustment is to allow the presentation of applications for minor variances and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regards to these applications. Written comments must be submitted to myself, the Secretary Treasurer for the committee. Should any members of the public like to be notified in writing of the Committee of Adjustment's decision on one of the applications, they are to provide their name and mailing address on the appropriate registry located by the door. Or they are to contact myself directly to be added to the appropriate registry. Members of the public do not have the right to appeal a decision of the committee. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, a specified person under the Planning Act, or a public body that has an interest in the matter may appeal the committee's decision.
This is a minor variance number D13, MV6, 2024, Kent's Pole. Owner, Alberta ULC, Jeff Kent's, and applicant is Pole Associates.
The notice for minor variance application MV06 2024 Kent's Pole was sent on July 22nd, 2024 to property owners within 60 meters, 200 feet of the subject property and to agencies requiring notice. The planner is available to provide her presentation.
Okay. Good evening to the committee and members of the public. So as mentioned by the chair, this is minor variance application MV06 2024. The property subject to this application is 70909 Airport Line. The owner is Jeff Kintz and the applicant is William Pole. So the applicant is looking to establish an on-farm diversified use, or OFDU, in the form of indoor recreational vehicle, boat and trailer storage in an existing building on the subject property. The South Huron zoning bylaw in section 3.23 requires that OFDUs be operated by the persons residing on the farm. There's currently not a residence on this farm, and so the applicant is seeking relief from this provision accordingly. So this is a 2020 air photo of the farm. It is designated agriculture in the South Huron official plan. It is zoned AG1 or general agriculture, as well as NE2 or natural environment. And then this is just a close-up of the farm showing the existing building envelope. The building that's proposed for the storage was not constructed in 2020, but it's approximately in the location in green you see on the screen there. There's also two other existing sheds on the north side of the driveway for a total of 3 buildings presently. Here's a site sketch that was submitted by the applicant, again, just showing that existing building on the south side of the driveway proposed for storage. And then this is just a photo looking west from Airport Line. You can see that storage building straight ahead with the beige brown siding there. So at this point in time, we haven't received any comments from members of the public. Municipal staff have no concerns with the application. The building department has noted that should the variance be approved, a building permit is required to be obtained in order to convert this building to be used for non-agricultural purposes. So as the committee is aware, the committee must be satisfied in terms of the 4 tests of a minor variance. Those tests being that the variance be minor, that it be desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure, as well as that it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and official plan. So both the South Huron official plan and zoning bylaw do explicitly contain criteria that requires that OFDUs must be operated by the persons residing on the farm in order to be established. OFDUs are sort of one of the select permitted uses that are permitted within Ontario's prime agricultural area in accordance with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020. The PPS, or Provincial Policy Statement, defines OFDUs as uses that are secondary to the principal agricultural use of the property and that are limited in area. OFDUs include, but are not limited to, home occupations, home industries, agritourism uses, and uses that produce value-added agricultural products. So from that definition, there is a publication 851, and that basically provides guidance on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas to municipalities. It provides a bit further detail in terms of how municipalities should provide criteria for OFDUs. And publication 851 essentially says that OFDUs, in order to qualify as a use, they must be located on a farm, they must be secondary to the principal agricultural use of that farm. They must be limited in area. And then again, notes that it may include or not be limited to those home occupations, home industries, agritourism uses, etc. And finally, publication 851 requires that it shall be compatible with and it shall not hinder agricultural operations. That publication 851, it further acknowledges that municipalities can provide their own local criteria for OFDUs in addition to the criteria within its guideline, and provided that the same objectives are met. So the approach in Huron historically has been to additionally require that the operator of an OFDU reside on the farm, and this appears to be the same approach in some surrounding jurisdictions. The rationale for this criteria is understood to be to ensure that the establishment of the OFDU meets the intent set out by the province, being to provide reasonable opportunities for farm operators to establish small-scale businesses to supplement their farm income. And the criteria was also intended to help ensure majority of commercial activities are directed to appropriately serviced settlement areas. So accordingly, it is staff's opinion at this time that it can be argued that the requested variance maintains the intent of the current official plan provisions. Accordingly, it is recommended that minor variance application MV06-2024 be denied. It was noted in the report that there were discussions with the owner and applicant about what planning applications might be warranted in order to grant permission for this proposal, but it was their direction to proceed with the minor variance as is being presented today. I do want to note in my presentation that if it is the will of the committee to approve the application, it is then recommended that it be subject to 2 conditions of approval. The one being that that building permit, as noted, be obtained in order to convert that building to be used for non-agricultural purposes. And then just again, that the variance be valid for a period of 18 months. So that concludes my presentation, but happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Selena, for your report. Are there any members of the public in attendance who would like to provide comments or has a question?
Certainly, Chairman, as the applicant's representative, I'd like to speak. I don't know if now's important.
That's fine. You'll go to the.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and a member of the committee. My name is William Pohl. I'm a land use planning consultant retained by the applicant, Jeff Knitz, for this application. Next, please. I just want to bring to the attention of the committee that we're seeking relief for an on-farm diversified use where there's no resident. We've requested 2 conditions be added. First of all, that there's a single tenant, Southwest Marine and Motorsports, that they're the exclusive tenant exclusively for the use of storing recreational boats and trailers. And secondly, that there's a limit on the size. So we're not intending to enlarge that use. And thirdly, through discussions with my client, we would like the variance to be limited to a period of 1 year. And I'll explain that in just a moment. So 3 conditions if it's granted by the committee. Next slide. So I guess the question is, how did we get here to begin with? The farm, there was a farm dwelling. It was removed from the site. Last year, the owner constructed a farm building in accordance with all the zone regulations. It was really intended for agricultural purposes, and the intended tenant didn't come through. It wasn't successful. Another business that's owned by Mr. Knitz is Southwest Marine and Power Sports. They had a location that they were renting for their storage business. That has fallen through for this year. And so he's looking to use an existing building that he owns for 1 year for the storage of recreational boats and trailers. Next slide. So the site's located, we know where it's located, on the west side of Airport Line, 1 lot north of Huron Road. Next slide. I will draw to the attention of the committee that in the staff report, the green outline of the building is larger than the actual site. This sketch provided by myself and the applicant show the actual size and location of the building. It's 20,000 square feet, much smaller than the staff report, located approximately 400 feet from the road. This is important because the building does not interfere with the agricultural and farming use of the site. That's the main predominant use as intended. Next slide, please. I think it's important to recognize that Airport Line has a number of functions, primarily agricultural, farming. That's going to continue on this site. But there's also the large greenhouse located at number 1. We have the Andrechika elevators located at number 2, sort of the intersection of Airport Line and Kirkton Road, excuse me. The Ontario Crops Research Center, an important part of farming in Huron County, providing independent research, and Morrissey Mulch and Storage, where there's actually zoning to allow exactly the same thing that Mr. Knitz is looking for today. Next slide. This is a photo from June 6th of 2024, the same as found in the report, but it shows the context, the size of the building. It's on the other opposite existing farm buildings. It's important that farming and agriculture is going to continue on the site, and it doesn't interfere with any of the surrounding land uses. Next slide. These are 4 photographs of surrounding farm uses that will continue. There will be no conflict, no interference with existing agricultural uses. Next slide. So I took a deep dive into the zone regulations for on-farm diversified use, and I think it's important for the committee to recognize that it's the general intent and purpose of the zoning has to be maintained, not the details, not the letter. So in fact, if we look at all of the 9 regulations applicable to the on-farm diversified uses, and I think South Huron has a robust form of on-farm diversified uses. They're considering all the aspects. 8 of the 9 criteria are met. So that's generally the intent has been, in my mind, fulfilled for on-farm diversified use. There's 1, which is the resident operator, that's not fulfilled. And I think in passing, Mr. Chairman, having a regulation that specifies who operates the use is really beyond the scope of the zoning of the Planning Act. Zoning regulations allow permitted uses, the size of buildings, the locations of buildings, but they don't allow municipalities to regulate who operates the use. So this regulation is sort of beyond the scope. Having said that, we're here today, we're making the application. Secondly, it doesn't interfere with the surrounding uses. It's an indoor use, relatively low traffic volume, 1 operator. And secondly, it's not going to conflict with other agriculture uses abutting the site. So the conclusion here is it's generally in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Next slide. The next one is a deep dive into the official plan. And again, South Huron has done a good job in setting out policies, what the general intent and purpose of the official plan is. In this case, we have 9 policies that apply to this site. And it conforms to 9 out of the 10 policies. Again, meeting the general intent and purpose of the on-farm diversified uses. And the only one, again, is the resident operator. It's compatible and there's no off-site impact. I think it's important to recognize that this is not a request to have a third party use the site for on-farm diversified use. The owner of the property is going to use it for his own business. Next slide. And then the last piece, taking a step back and looking at the big picture, looking at the provincial policy statement, the planner referenced the OMAFRA guideline 851 and the Huron County official plan. And I even touched base with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. All of those bigger policy directions do not require an on-site resident operator. Yes, South Huron municipality has looked at it and added that, but generally, big picture, there's no requirement for a resident operator. Last slide. I think in conclusion to the committee, first of all, there's been no public opposition to this request. There's no staff or agency requirement other than the planning office objecting to the adaptive reuse. And this, to my mind, this is an adaptive, sustainable reuse. The applicant's going to use it for a year, and then it's going to go into farm, agriculture-related farm use. It's an appropriate use for the building to address a unique circumstance. There's no conflict, no impact. Complies with 8 of the 9 zone regulations. The general intent of the zoning is met. Conforms to 9 out of the 10 official plan policies. The general intent of the official plan is met. In my mind, it's consistent with the policy framework. And the conditions, I think, can give some confidence to, first of all, the committee as well as the municipality, that it's one tenant limited for 1 year to the 20,000, 1,800 square meters. Thank you very much for your time to the committee. Thanks for the assistance of staff. They've been very cooperative. Notwithstanding that we don't agree, we can still work through some of these issues, and I'm available for any questions. My client is also here in the audience, and he's willing to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bowl, for your presentation. Is there anybody else would like to say anything or ask any questions? Or seeing none, I guess we can move on. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pohl has answered the majority of the questions I had with the request for the 1-year variance being requested. Just was curious to that 1-year timeline versus if we were to change a standard is usually 18 months in a scenario. So the idea originally when this building was built, it was for an ag purpose. That deal fell through. You're looking to use it for your own purpose for now until that purpose comes again in a year's time, is what I'm understanding in the scenario.
Through the chair to the committee. Yes, that's the intent. Just a clarification, through the committee to the planner. The 18 months for the minor variance, is that how long the variance will run, or 18 months to fulfill the conditions? That would be my clarification.
Through the chair, so the 18 months is pertaining to the length of time to fulfill the condition. So typically, generally for any minor variance in South Huron, once that variance approval is complete and the use is established and that 18 months passes, the use effectively just becomes legal non-compliant. It's a legal use. It was permitted by the committee. There's no sort of expiry date. The only thing worth noting in this context is that if that use ceases to exist for a period of time, then the rules and regulations of the day kick in and you're no longer able to revert to that previously approved variance. So in the context of this application, through to Mr. Pohl, I would say, yeah, the 18 months is just for the purpose of getting that building permit, but there would be no period from my perspective through which the use would no longer be permitted if it continues and is approved by the committee. If that provides some clarification.
Here,
Thank you. And just a question, so the on-farm diversified use, based on what Mr. Pohl was presenting, Huron County doesn't require a resident to live there for an on-farm under the Huron County policy. And I'm just wondering, is there any other municipalities in the county that don't require that, or how many other municipalities in the county actually require or have that resident requirement?
Thank you. Through the chair, you are correct. The South or the North, not North Huron, pardon me, the Huron County official plan does not contain a stipulation that an OFDU be operated by a resident. I believe it varies across the county. I don't know exact numbers. I know of a few that do require an operator. I know of a couple others who don't. So I think it's just varied throughout time, the approach that's been taken since OFDUs became a permitted use provincially.
And one last question, I guess, if this were to proceed, is this something that we could look at with our official plan review that's ongoing right at the moment, that should be maybe reviewed?
Yeah, through the chair, definitely if there was direction from the broader council, we could take a look at this policy. The first draft will be going forward to council next week. So certainly following that being received for information, we can take a look at this if that is the direction of council.
okay. The only comment I would have is there'd be no outside storage, is there?
To the chair and committee, that's correct. There's no outside storage. It's all indoors.
Right.
Correct.
Usually that's where you end up with the biggest problem, like people don't want to look at that or whatever, so. No, that's, if that can be written in, then that's fine.
To the chair, we have no objection to one of the conditions being exclusive to indoor storage.
Right, okay. Are there any other further questions or comments from anyone? Selena?
Sorry, thank you. Through the chair, I just want to speak to the requested conditions from Mr. Pohl. My only thought there is, if it is the direction of the committee to approve, is that the condition pertaining to a single tenant, it's not really a condition that's enforceable or something that the municipality is able to just clear the way we can clear the condition for a building permit. So it's my perspective that I don't think the condition's warranted if that is the committee's direction, but I'm happy to discuss further. But I just wanted to note that pending how the committee chooses to vote.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Oakley.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering about that, if that was the case, the same as a year's time, it goes into ag use. You know, and then 2 years from now or 3 years from now, that contract runs out or something, and then what happens down the road if something, you know, just yeah, I hear you, but there are other buildings in our municipality that are not, people aren't living on the property and they're being used for other storages as well. So this isn't an uncommon scenario for sure. So, okay, thank you.
Make a motion.
So through the chair, as this is the first time that the committee has received a recommendation from a planner to deny an application in a while, I will be reading the recommendation before the committee as recommended by the planner. Should the committee wish to proceed with a different recommendation, the cleanest way to proceed would be for the committee to refrain from moving or seconding the proposed motion. So the proposed motion would be the minor variance D13 MV 07 2024 Kins poll be denied as per the attached decision, and that would include 2A, no public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. And 6B, agency comments were received on the issue of an application not conforming with the official plan, the effect of which influenced the decision to deny the application. So if there is no mover or seconder on that, then the committee has a recommendation to approve. Comments could include 2A, no public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. And 5B, comments were received from agencies on the issue of the application not conforming with the official plan. Comments were thoroughly considered, but the effect did not influence the decision of council to approve the application. And that would be to approve the application with the conditions that a building permit be obtained to convert the proposed storage building to be used for non-agricultural purposes to the satisfaction of the municipality, and the variance approval is valid for a period of 18 months from the date of the committee's decision.
You make a motion, then you approve it, you second it? Okay,
Moved and seconded, okay. Oh, sorry. So that was that minor variance D13 MV 06 2024 Kins pool be approved as per the attached decision sheet with the recommendations, following conditions, a building permit be obtained to convert the proposed storage building to be used for non-agricultural purposes to the satisfaction of the municipality. The variance approval would be valid for a period of 18 months from the date of the committee's decision. And that was moved by member Oak and seconded by Chair Dietrich. All in favor? Oh, discussion?
Just a discussion. So I'm just a little bit confused on the 18 months versus the one year variance request that Mr. Pohl had, just to make sure that we were covering that as well. Selena, maybe you could comment or.
The chair and I would welcome Mr. Pohl's comments. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding about the purpose of the variance approval period. So I believe Mr. Pohl's intent was just to signal that it's his client's intent to perhaps only operate this for a year at a time. The intent of the recommended 18-month approval period from myself is to give the applicant 18 months to get that building permit that he requires. There will be no sort of end date for the variance approval as long as the use continues.
thank you. Make a motion.
So you have a mover and seconder, and if no further discussion, all in favor? And that carries.
So we got what we want. We ready to go again? Okay. We'll move on to a minor variance, number D13 MV 07 2024 Baker. Owner John Baker Holdings. Applicant Baker Planning Group, CO Carolyn Baker.
The notice for minor variance application MV 07-2024 Baker was sent on July 15th, 2024 to property owners within 60 meters, 200 feet of the subject property and to agencies requiring notice. And Planner McIntosh can proceed.
Thank you. So as noted by the chair, this is MV 07-2024. The property subject to this application is 296 Huron Street West in Exeter. It is owned by John Baker Holding Corporation, and the applicant on John's behalf is Caroline Baker. So the lands subject to this minor variance were also subject to consent application C34-2024, and that was granted conditional approval earlier this year. And that application sought to sever the west corner of this existing property in order to create a new separately conveyable residential lot. So section 30.5 of the South Huron zoning bylaw does require that fully serviced corner lots in the R1 or residential low density zone have a minimum frontage of 18 meters. The severed parcel in C34-2024 has a proposed frontage of 17 meters. So a condition of that consent application was that relief be granted in order to allow the lot to have a reduced frontage. So this is what the applicant is doing or requesting with this application. So if approved, this will clear one of the conditions of that consent application in order to allow for that lot to be registered. So here's a 2020 air photo of the subject property. So the lot we're talking about that was severed is outlined in red there. And so the frontage I'm referring to is that portion of it along the south portion adjacent to Huron Street West. That's what's proposed to be 17 meters instead of the minimum 18. The yellow parcel here is the retained parcel for that consent. It is noted for the committee that you can see that existing house crosses over the proposed property line. The area of that house is an indoor pool. So a separate condition of this consent is that that indoor pool is removed. So if this lot does get registered, it will be vacant at the time of registration. This property is designated residential in the South Huron official plan. It's zoned R1 or residential low density. Here's a photo of the property. We're looking east from Snyder Crescent, so you can see the indoor pool with sort of a lower roof line there. The new construction on the north side is a separate lot that was also severed from this property, I believe a year or two ago. And then this is just a theoretical site plan submitted by the applicant. It just shows a theoretical building envelope for that severed parcel should it be reduced with frontage. This was just submitted for the purpose of the application. It's noted that this is not necessarily what's proposed to be built at the end of the day if approved. So at this time, there's actually been 2 letters of objection received, both from neighbors. One of the neighbors just noted that that 1 meter reduction does equal a 5% reduction, and he is in objection to that. Another neighbor noted that she has primarily concerns, I believe, with construction more so, and just the impacts of construction on the neighborhood. So those objections are noted. Municipal staff have no concerns with this application. They did note that new sanitarium water servicing is required for the slot as well as an entrance permit. Further, there might be sidewalk replacement and boulevard regrading required in order to accommodate a future new driveway off of Snyder Crescent. So in terms of the 4 tests of a minor variance, we can consider this to be minor. The rationale for that larger frontage on corner properties is in conjunction with exterior side yard requirements, just to ensure that site triangle requirements are met from a traffic safety perspective. The site plan that the applicant submitted with that proposed frontage does demonstrate that a standard size house can be built here and still constructed within that mandatory front yard and exterior side yard setback. So no concerns from a site triangle perspective. So accordingly, the reduction doesn't appear to pose any safety or servicing issues. This variance can be considered desirable for the development of the property, and it can be considered to maintain the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. Approval of the reduced frontage will allow for the creation of a new lot through infill, which is strongly encouraged by the official plan as a sustainable way to permit growth in Exeter. And the proposed lot does meet all other criteria of the zoning bylaw. So it is my opinion that this variance meets those 4 minor variance tests, and so it is recommended to be approved. And that would be subject to 2 recommended conditions, one being that those owners obtain an entrance permit for the subject lands, and that the variance be valid for a period of 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena, for your report. Are there any members of the public in attendance who would like to provide comments or has a question? You may proceed to the
Hello, my name is Paul Paget. I live at 11 Snyder Crescent. That's approximately 6 lots to the north of the proposed corner and property on the west side. So, but first of all, yeah, I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the council on this matter. Needless to say, there are a lot of people that are emphatically opposed to the idea of cramming another residence into this already overcrowded lot, and we stand with our neighbors on this. We don't want to second guess anything that's going on right now, with the property that's currently under construction, but it's bad enough that that original lot was severed to allow a highly out of scale dwelling that sticks out like a sore thumb, especially to the adjacent properties, but also to the properties that overlook this new development and all the way down the west end of Huron Street. Anyone who doesn't believe me, I'd encourage you to see it for yourself. But what's done is done, and we're not here to talk about that. Excuse me. Personally, I'm all for free enterprise and improvement and development, but to allow this variance and reduction in frontage by letting the last person into this subdivision, you're just doing a huge disservice to the neighbors. I know it isn't what they envisioned when they moved into this subdivision. It creates an environment where we're losing that small town atmosphere and setting for the other residents in the neighborhood. And it was noted that this is a low density subdivision, and that's what it was intended for. In summary, we respectfully ask that the council not accommodate this variance and reduction in frontage for the purpose of shoehorning and cramming another residence onto this lot. Original lot. The current bylaw zoning restriction was established for a reason, and we encourage the council to maintain this. If for no other reason, do it for the established citizens that have been there for many years. Ourselves, we've been there 28 years, and we've been very happy in that neighborhood and very happy in this town too. But allowing this to happen comes solely to the detriment of the longer term citizens. Again, improvement is one thing, and I'm not sorry, and I'm sorry, but this is just on the part of the developer, a short-sighted and greed-fueled request. Again, thank you.
Thank you for your concerns. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Through the chair, there are a couple individuals who are online who've joined remote. I'm just going to see if anybody who has joined remote has any interest in speaking. Mackenzie, I'm just checking to see if you have anything to provide on this particular application.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thank you. Hi, good evening. Hi, my name is Mackenzie Van Hel. I am Paul's neighbor across the street at number 6 Snyder Crescent. Sure. Currently, this was number 4 up until the new housing construction at number 2 was approved, at which point myself and our next door neighbor were asked to change our address. So we are now number 6, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, being in government is a lot of paperwork, a lot of address changes, is timely and expensive. Just yesterday, a neighbor dropped off a piece of mail that ended up in her mailbox, which is interesting considering number 6 had never existed before. So it doesn't make sense that it would be getting shoved down to number 8. That being said, our main concern is that we do not want this approved based on the lack of frontage. As it's been pointed out, this does reduce the visibility on that corner by 5%, and that's quite a bit in a busy neighborhood full of children on bikes and rollerblades. The thought is that if this is a low-density residential zone, that it should remain low density, and a larger house does not necessarily mean low density. That means more residents as opposed to less. And again, hopefully we don't have to change our address for a second time. Thank you.
Thank you for your concerns. Is there anyone else with any comments at this time?
Caroline Baker.
Thank you. Is it okay to speak at this time?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies. Good evening to the chair, members of the committee. My name is Caroline Baker from Baker Planning Group. I'm the agent representing the owner with respect to this minor variance. I appreciate staff's review and recommendation for approval, as well as their presentation. Just wanted to add a few quick additional comments based on both the report and the comments received from the community this evening. I did want to note that this was an approved consent, and it did receive a review and circulation from the municipality's public works and engineering departments in terms of a appropriate lot that has safe access and visibility. The required sightline triangle at this intersection can easily and well be maintained, regardless of the lot having a 17-meter frontage versus an 18-meter frontage. I also want to note that the proposed lot that's been an approved consent exceeds or meets all other zoning requirements. It exceeds the minimum lot area, it exceeds the lot depth, it generally meets and exceeds all setbacks and landscape open space. So in my opinion, given that it meets all of these setbacks to the neighbors, appropriate landscaping and sightlines, it is an appropriate size to accommodate a single detached dwelling. And just lastly, I want to note that it is proposed to be a single detached dwelling, which is considered low density, and certainly maintaining lots with single detached dwellings will maintain that low density character and use within the community. But certainly I can answer any other questions either the committee or members may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone here who would like to ask the question to Carol?
Sorry, if you could just come down and use the microphone.
Thank you. Margie Paget, 11 Snyder Crescent, Exeter. My question is just asking, how come it got approved before the public could even vote on this or have any say in it?
Yeah, thank
this
you.
matter.
Through the chair. So there was a consent application that was circulated. That would have been circulated to all neighbors within 60 meters for comment. That Planning Act process is slightly different than a minor variance in the fact that there's no mandatory public meeting for a consent. So unless a consent is objected by the neighbors, it's essentially signed off as undisputed. There were no comments received after consent circulation, so there was no objections received, and that subsequently received approval at that time. As noted, a condition of consent being what's required to be fulfilled before that law can be registered was this approval through the Committee of Adjustment. So that's what we're here to do today.
So just to clarify then, all the neighbors within 200 feet roughly would have got notice of that consent at the time that it was applied for.
Correct, through the chair. So everyone within 60 meters would have received notice from the Huron County Planning Department of that consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other concerns or? If not, are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Oh, if there's anybody else online.
It doesn't appear that there's anyone else online unless anybody else has any other comments.
Okay. Are there any comments from the committee?
Sure. Now I know, the minor variance, the 1 meter, was the only reason that it's here tonight. Basically, everything else had been approved. No different than the other entrance on Snyder where the other house went in, to infill on the other side of Snyder there. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the only reason it's here tonight was that 1 meter requirement, the 18 meter versus, or 17 versus 18. Okay. Thank you.
Correct, for those online. Yep, that's correct.
Are there any further questions or comments from anyone? Well, I would ask the secretary to propose suggestions on the motion.
So options could be 5A, public comments were received in opposition to the requested relief. Comments were thoroughly considered but did not have an impact on the decision of the committee to approve the application. And no agency comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. And the recommendation would be that minor variance D13 MV 07 2024 Baker be approved.
Moved by, seconded by. I think. All in
So
favor?
that carries.
We'll move on to the next minor variance then. Number D13 MVOM B08 2024. Steinbrink, owner applicant Lars and Ingrid Steinberg.
The notice for minor variance application MV 08 2024 Sternbrink was sent on July 22nd, 2024 to property owners within 60 meters, 200 feet of the property and to agencies requiring notice. The planner can proceed.
Thank you. So as mentioned by the chair, this is minor variance MV 08 2024. The subject property is located at 42540 Huron Street, and the owner and applicant here is Lars Stunebrink. So this applicant is looking to convert an existing residence on his farm into on-farm labor housing. Section 4.4.2 of the zoning bylaw does require that on-farm labor housing be located no further than 60 meters from the main dwelling. The applicants are looking to build a new house, which will become the main dwelling, and that is proposed to be 90 meters from this existing dwelling that's going to become on-farm labor. So hence the variance request here. So this is a 2020 air photo of the farm. It's not showing up great here, but the existing residence is shown in the purple circle. It is noted that since this photo was taken, there is an additional barn that's been constructed to the north of that residence. So there is, in addition to the residence, 3 barns and 2 sheds on this property. This is a photo of the subject property looking north from Huron Street. This farm is designated agriculture in the South Huron official plan, and it is zoned AG1 or general agriculture in the zoning bylaw there. And this is just a site plan submitted by the applicant. It shows the proposed residence that's going to be located on the south, I guess it's southeast corner of the farm. And again, that's at a proposed distance of about 90 meters or so. In terms of comments, there was nothing received from the public on this application. Municipal staff also have no concerns. So in terms of those 4 tests of a minor variance, this variance can be considered minor and desirable for the development of the property. The intent of those provisions when regulating on-farm labor was to ensure that labor housing can be generally clustered with that existing building envelope in order to reduce potentially future severance pressures as well as to retain more cropped land where feasible. The current residence that we saw on the site plan, it's quite clustered within that existing building envelope where those barns and sheds are located. And so while that new house is further than 60 meters, I think we can say it's generally felt to meet the intent of the zoning bylaw when it comes to that clustering piece. And further, it's not expected to create any new minimum distance separation or MDS pressures to surrounding neighbors when it comes to putting up livestock barns. And with that being said, the variance also maintains the general intent of the South Huron official plan and zoning bylaw. As mentioned, that on-farm labor housing is going to meet all of their provisions of the bylaw, including being accessed by the same laneway as the main residence. And the official plan generally permits on-farm labor housing accessory to commercial scale agriculture, as is being proposed here. So with that being said, this variance does meet the 4 tests of a minor variance, and it is recommended that it be approved, subject to conditions just requiring that future residence not be located further than 90 meters from that existing residence, and that the variance approval be valid for a period of 18 months from the committee's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Are there any members of the public in attendance who would like to provide comments or has a question? Seeing none, are there any other agencies?
There's no one else online.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the committee?
No, I don't have any comments. Just want to note that we did get some communication this afternoon.
Yes, through the chair, following the publishing of the agenda, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority did reach out to provide written comment. They just provided a brief overview, but they did not have any concerns with the proposed application.
Thank you. We're good. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we can propose on to the next item. I would ask the Secretary Treasurer to propose suggestions on the motion.
So suggestions for the recommendation, no public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. Agency comments were received with no concerns on the application so there was no effect on the decision. And the recommendation would be that minor variance D13 MV 08 2024 Sternbrink be approved.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? All in favor? We can adjourn this meeting now then at whatever time it is.
So recommendation that South Huron Committee of Adjustment hereby adjourns at 5:53 PM. Mover, please. Seconder, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.